You ever watch a movie and just think, what the fuck? Like, what the actual fuck? Like, who in their right mind thought making this was a good idea? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't read the title yet, I'm talking about Antebellum starring Janelle Monáe. This movie is basically 12 Years a Slave without any of the good stuff, and it's got an even more sadistic build-up and reveal of the surprise twist. For those of you who haven't seen this film yet, I'm probably going to spoil it. Just a heads up. I can't really say what I'm thinking without spoiling it, so consider yourself warned. Antebellum is classified as a thriller horror mystery, but it never really felt like any of them. There was a bit of mystery, parts of this movie did feel like a thriller, and it definitely wanted to be a horror, but they never all came together as a cohesive unit. I think it relied too much on the fact that the subject matter it's covering was going to be frightening enough, revisiting the horrors of American slavery rather than telling its own story. And it was all disjointed and disordered to be coherent. The opening sequence, though beautifully shot, went on way too long and had me wishing that it was about half the length. It felt like an ode to the Confederacy, and although it did do a great job of establishing the tone of this film throughout, it was just super uncomfortable to sit through. This whole movie just felt off for the first 2/3 of it. Little things here and there that just had me wondering if I was reacting to something or if the movie was purposefully keeping the audience off balance. The second act tried to double down on this feeling by being a thriller with suspense and mystery, but without fully committing to it, it felt out of place in the movie as a whole. It both showed too much and too little at key points throughout. But really, it was just too big a change of pace to flow with the rest of the movie. Maybe a change to the film's editing and pacing could have helped with this, but that's not even the biggest issue with Antebellum. The biggest issue with this story is the story. Kidnapping black scholars who speak on past racist transgressions and its lingering effects in today's society, and then forcing them to regress back into actual slavery? Having an organization to run this scheme and customers to partake like a more fucked up racist version of Westworld? I mean, even if they think it's all staged with actors, what kind of person would want to willingly revisit this part of American history? Actually, don't answer that, please. There isn't a single plot point or story element that didn't make me cringe while watching it, from the plantation to the hotel to the restaurant. And to end it all, this movie doesn't even give the audience a satisfying resolution. Sure, the movie ends and the bad guys lose, but the protagonist doesn't really win. They survive and presumably make it back to their old life, but a return to the status quo isn't a victory, especially for all of the sacrifice required. And for all of the fiery and bloody comeuppance, the underlying tragedy is largely unaffected and continues on regardless. Now, not every story needs to have a happy ending, and I don't mind a dark story. I actually recently reviewed one that I really liked. I'll link it somewhere below. But not only did this movie choose a heavy topic, but it went about it in a manner that I don't think was constructive at all. Now, don't get me wrong, this movie did have some bright spots, most notably the cinematography and acting. Janelle Monáe was fantastic and displayed an ability that I thoroughly enjoyed watching on screen. She was a bit handicapped, so to speak, with her character not being able to talk for the majority of the film. Now that's the fault of the writing, not her own, and she gives a great performance despite that. Janelle has a history of portraying strong black women throughout history, first in 2016's Hidden Figures, then 2019's Harriet. But while the first two showed triumphs, this run reverses course on black excellence. Gabri Sidibe was hilarious, and every word out of her mouth was pure gold. Her character may not have really fit in with the tone of this movie, but she was still one of the few things in this movie that actually made me smile while watching it.
Girl, I said step it up, not murder these hoes.
But it wasn't nearly enough to even get close to offsetting my disgust with this film. But it's when we get to the twist of this film where everything starts to fall apart for me. Once you know what's actually going on, most of the on-screen action just feels unnecessary for the sake of being shocking. I honestly do not know who this film was made for. In the comments, can somebody please tell me who the intended audience was? Because I cannot figure it out. I know it's definitely not what the filmmakers intended, but Antebellum seemed to be, at least partially, glorifying one of the worst parts in American history. I do think that there was a message this film was trying to send, but I also think it seriously fumbled its words, and at the end of the film, it just gave up, resorting to killing characters in an attempt to save itself. I honestly cannot tell if this movie is terrible or genius for its polarizing nature. I've heard some people praise it while others call it nothing more than black torture porn. And for me, I just can't think of another movie that's left such a bad taste in my mouth after finishing it. Whether you should watch this movie or not, I have to leave that up to you to decide if you're in the mood for a truly sadistic look into a piece of American prejudice. That's all I've got on Antebellum for now. I'm sure this movie will keep rattling around in my head for the next few days. But until next time, have a great day, and don't forget to watch a great movie. Bye.